the other day I was sitting in the dentist chair having a conversation. How many of you know what that's like? Like, I love having a good conversation. That's lovely. But the implements in the mouth kind of, well, yeah, how are things going? Yeah, everything's great. We tend to have difficult. Any of you dentists in here? And there's one training to be an orthodontist, so I don't want to. But that's really, really hard to have a conversation with a dentist or a hygienist when they got their fingers in your face and stuff like that. But my doctor knows that I'm a pastor, and so she asked me a great question. So how are things going with the church? I was like, wow, thanks for asking. So I tried to give her as much as I could through her implements and mirrors in my mouth and stuff like that. But then I asked her, so are you part of a church? Are you part of a church? And she said, no. I just attend fill in the blank church on Sundays. My hands, I have to keep my hands, I'm like, how's this way? So my doctor, dentist, says, no, I'm not part of a church. I just attend fill in the blank this church on Sundays. That's all I do. And I was like, oh, this is gold. This is gold. Can't wait to have this conversation with my people. Some of whom feel like, well, that's all it means, right? You just show up every once in a while. Isn't that that's part of a church? Like this woman got what we've been talking about. We are the church. It's not something you go to. The church is having a service. I get that, but we are not a service provider. We're a family. We're a family of servant missionaries, actually. This is who we are. So you don't go to this thing. So when I asked her, are you part of a church? She says, no, I just attend this church on Sundays. I used to be part of a church. And guess what we did? So she fills in the blanks. We would often serve homeless people. We would go out and do all these projects. We were connected. She just describes being part of a family of servant missionaries. I mean, this isn't just something you attend. This is a people you are, and it was just so beautiful. I thought I had to share that with you, because what we've been talking about is who we are as the church. And if God tells us who we are, how dare we tell Him that we're not who He says we are? If He says this is who you are, now go and do this. Well, I don't know. How dare we do that? If He's called us to lean into life and lean into His work in the world and do that together on mission, then who are we to say, well, no, I want option B or C, please, or D. But if you are the church, then you are who He says you are. And that's something that I think we've got to get deep into our conviction mode, which leads to action. And out of just this concept of like, oh, isn't that kind of a nice idea? That's a really nice thought. Because a lot of us think, religion's one thing, but but Christianity is a personal relationship with Jesus, right? That fits well on a bumper sticker, right? It's a personal relationship. But some of us have taken that a step further. It's a private relationship, which means it's just me and God. Y'all stay out of it. This is not about you. And so when we say, oh, be a part of a discipleship community or making apprentices of Jesus, you're like, no, me and God, we're fine. Maybe you are. And I know that if you were stuck on a desert island, and of course you'd bring your Bible with you, it's the one thing you choose, right? You bring your Bible with you to that deserted island, and it's just you and God. That's all you got? Absolutely. God will meet you there. He'll meet you in your prison cell. He will meet you in solitary confinement. He'll meet you on your deserted island. But is that His intention for you? His intention is for you to be a part of a family, to be a part of a people, to have your identity wrapped up in Him. And so we're not to have a private relationship. We're actually to be members of a family, members of a body, and then doing that together. And some of you are scared because you think that they're going to find out that I don't do well in these kind of situations. I get a little anxious, or I get a little mouthy, or I get a little, That's because you think. that this is a place where you're supposed to show up and look good so that people think everything's going fine. That's not who we are, right? Many of us, we've talked about this before, many of us approach even a church service like we're preparing for a job interview. You got your resume all, okay, I tried to do good things this last week. I tried to look really nice, and so I come into that, as opposed to the waiting room for a doctor's office or an emergency room, better yet. How many of you have had that time in the emergency room? And then people are like getting in ahead of you because they're bleeding more. And you're like, well, maybe I could bleed more if I needed to get some attention here. There's like, well, it's a head wound. Okay, well, fine. You can go ahead of me. That's fine. I'm just bleeding out. My arm is severed, but he's got a head wound, heads, arms. Okay, I get the category. But there you're trying to impress the doctor with like, no, seriously, I need help. And we have access to said surgeon who can meet us in our time of need. So there's no reason to fake it. There's no reason to fake it. I know sometimes I confess things to you. They're like, why is he bothering confessing that to me? I don't know. Because sometimes Jesus says, you should probably just tell him that. And I'm like, oh, okay, here it goes. But a confessing people are also a confessing people. People who confess their sin also confess the greatness of God, whose grace pours out in and through their lives. And so we become those kinds of people. Really, it's about an everyday mission. We've been talking about everyday people and the everyday gospel and an everyday mission. And really what that does for you is give you meaning in your everyday. It's not like Monday through Saturday is my time and my goals and my kingdom and my mission, and then Sunday is this like, whoa, apparently now Jesus is in charge of everything. Okay, back to business on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. He means to provide meaning in every aspect of our life. Because ultimately, this is his world, and he will be spoken of with honor and glory. There will be a day when the whole world will be filled, like the waters cover the sea. At the saturation point, that's the whole point. You finally got the title. Okay, welcome back. That's good. To saturation point, the waters covering the sea, the glory of God, the story of his glory will fill the earth. And we get to be a part of that. We get to take people behind the curtain to go see the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. We get that opportunity to invite them in. We've been talking about how we want to see multiple churches, probably dozens and maybe 100 churches, filling and filled by the Spirit and equipping their people and sending them out into the everyday stuff of life, wherever we live, work, learn, or play. There's a group of churches gathering around this idea of mission and saturate and asking God to put a community of people that are formed around the gospel, that are telling about the story of God's glory. He's so good. He's so amazing. Look at how he brings your chaos into order. Look at how he saves you from sin, how he frees you from bondage to all these other identities, all these other gods, ultimately. Look at that. That in every place around this east side and the Seattle area, there would be a gospel community on mission that would be praying for and desiring God's glory to be in that place. That means if there was 1,000 people in your Microsoft building, that there would be a gospel community on mission, maybe from multiple churches that are thinking, okay, what would it look like for God's story to invade this place? And what about at the gym? And what about at your school and in your university and at your training program? And what about in your neighborhood? That in our neighborhood, there's probably less than 1,000 people, but in our neighborhood there would be a gospel community on mission that would be praying for and loving and telling the story of how good God is, inviting them to see what a great and glorious God. And we've been saying that ultimately, when we get right down to it, Jesus wins. All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to Jesus. Not just a little bit, not just for the Christians. He is the head of the church, yeah, but not just for Christians. All authority in heaven and earth has been given to me, says Jesus. So go to all the nations. Go and make disciples of all of the nations, baptizing them in the name. So there's a new identity, the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And then this is the one that has hung me up for years, teaching them to observe all that I've commanded you. How long would it take to learn all that Jesus has commanded and to take somebody into a lifestyle where everything in their life was fully devoted to Christ? Well, that's discipleship. And we know that's kind of a long-term process. But it's not just teach them everything I said. It's teach them to observe everything. How many of you have raised little kids that at least to the point of age 3 and up, right? So you're kind of age 3. There's a transition point. I know some of you have crawlers and walkers now. There's a transition point when you have to teach them some things. And then having just said it doesn't appear to be enough. You notice that? No, I told him not to run in the street. Look at him go. What's his problem? Right? Must take after you, honey. I don't know. I told him not to put his hand on the stove. Look at him go. You know, he just keeps doing it. I don't know. Teach them to observe. There's this training aspect. That's where you walk them to the edge of the road and you say, ouch, and zoom, and you tell them about the cars and you do all that kind of stuff. And then sometimes you may have a kid like I had who said, well, I can run out in the street. It's no big deal. And we'd say, no, you can't just run out in the street. What if a car comes? What if I have a better plan? Said the only one of my middle sons said that, but it was. He's like, I got a plan for this. What if I've already calculated the velocity of the cars? What if I've already figured this out? There's a lot of training that's like, no. We just there's some boundaries we just respect, right? Teaching them to observe everything. Does that sound like something you could just do? I could just teach you to observe it right now? Or do we have to walk a little bit together? So this is what it looks like. This is what it looks like. You just like you can't teach someone to observe all that I've commanded and have a mindset that says yes to Jesus in every aspect of life unless you have somebody walking through you with that. And every time I train discipleship from this vantage point, some of you are going, then why are you telling us? Why aren't you just showing us? Because after all, if more is caught than taught, more is understood by just, oh, that's what you mean by that, then we need to be in a mindset where we're living life together. We've talked about this, life on life, life in community, life on mission, where we're showing each other. This is what it looks like to follow Jesus. And we need to walk that out in the everyday stuff of life. Jesus wants to take back Monday through Saturday. All authority in heaven and earth has been given to him, and he wants you to be the church, not just be an attender, but be part of it. So who needs to be discipled? Who needs to hear this story? Where are those people? And I know that I've talked to many of you. You say, well, Aaron, I don't have non-Christian friends. And that's actually the case with many American Christians. I've got my friends. I got my family. I'm good. What else do I need? I got them right here. I got my family. And that's awesome. And that's a treasure. And that's beautiful. And yet, how do we show them that we are followers of Christ by our love? And how do we exemplify that? And how do we tell the story if we're not involved in where they are and what they're doing? And so that's why we talk about being a community that's in life on life together in community, but on mission. So that you will actually interrupt those broken spaces. You will go find wherever there's brokenness and chaos and invite the Spirit, thinking Genesis 1:1 again, invite the Spirit to hover over the chaos and bring order and life and light. To have the Spirit of God, just as he's come into our lives, bring him into that new terrain and say, God, what do you want to do in this environment? How could we be a part of it? And you'll be scared. And you'll feel this is out of your comfort zone. And you'll say, oh, we got to pray. Oh, when was the last time you had to pray about about a broken situation where you just had to be compelled to pray for these non-Christian people who are in such dire straits that I don't even know how to fix it. I guess all we can do is just pray. Now we're starting to look like the book of Acts. You ever read through that? It's like, well, I guess we're just going to have to pray about this one and see what God does and watch God do his work. When we say we want to infuse your small group with a sense of mission, it's because we want you to be out there to share this awesome news. And you say, but I'm not equipped or trained. Okay, cool. So let's equip and let's train you and let's share our ministry with one another. And, oh, you need that experience. So go with Dennis and his family and go serve a meal at the hot meal program and get over that little hump in your head that says, I don't know if I could ever do that sort of thing. Well, I mean, Dennis makes it look easy, right? But still, he can show you how to interact or walk along with Dan McManus. He goes down there too sometimes just to the fire station, and that's where Carlene is doing her great work and serving and meeting with people, not just feeding them, but eating with them and just learning that rhythm and that pace in the midst of chaos. You can't get much more chaotic than a group of people whose lives are just going spinning off in all these different directions. And there's nothing really more that connects you to the Spirit of God when you need him. You say, I don't know what to do. How do I speak hope and life into this kind of situation? What even would I say, Jesus? And he says, you're asking the right questions. This is great. Welcome to the new comfort zone. There will be others. But now you're good at it. Now you can see how I can do that. And he wants to lead us on. And you say, if you're typical, and I know this is an atypical bunch, but you might say, that's just not who I am. But if God says that's who you are, who are you to tell him that you're not who he says you are? Like, what if he says it? We've just been having this fascinating study, at least for me, on the class before this at 9:30, talking about people like Moses, who God says, go and speak to Pharaoh and tell him this. And Moses is like, I don't speech well, you know? And God says, but I made your mouth. And I'm telling you to go do it. And there's this curious statement in there, I will be with your mouth, he says. What does that mean? I will be with your mouth. And then to really tick God off, he says, I don't know. I don't think I am who you say I am. And God's like, again with the I'm not who you say I am bit. You are who I tell you you are. And if I give you a mouth and I make mouths and I will be with your mouth, then you will go and speak to Pharaoh. So we're at the edge of ticking God off. When we tell him, oh, I don't know, you call us servants and missionaries? Not really. We're more just friends. You know, we're more just, I like the family side of things, but that whole moving out into finding where the chaos is and the brokenness and finding you there, I don't know about that. That's the curious nature of mission trips, right? Mission trips have this amazing experience. I've been on, I don't know how many. But you go there and you find out God is at work there. He's at work in the broken places. He's at work in the chaotic places. He's alive and active. And then you come home to your comfort zone and you say, man, I wish God was at work here. I can't wait till I get back to Costa Rica where I can find God at work. He's in the broken places. There's something curious that we should probably put together. He's at work in all these broken places where people are crying out to him. And we get to bring in the story of his glory. Ultimately, we can give them a taste of what the kingdom is like by entering into their space. We can let them know they can actually meet the king. A while back, I was on a triple date. There's some famously wonderful triple dates that my wife and I have been on. One of them, Heather led us to Nan and Curry, downtown Renton. Because she had been there with some girlfriends, and it was like, we've got to go. So we ordered way too much food. We did the thing, everybody pretending to be super wealthy. And like, well, whatever, you just tell us what you want us to have. You just tell us, what's good. And so pretty soon the owner's coming out and describing all these wonderful things to us and all that. We probably paid for his time in that sense. But he said, hey, do you want to go to the back of the house? Do you want to take a look? You want to come on back to the kitchen? I'm like, yeah, we'd love to see that. Because we were talking about, we've been trying to make tandoori chicken, but we really like naan bread, but it's really hard to make that. And he's like, oh, come on. So this little group of the 7 of us, with the owner included, went to the back of the house, and it was amazing. When we stuck our heads in there, they're like, what's going on? But then they see the owner, and it's like, oh, well, the owner will do what the owner will do, right? If he wants to give you a tour of the kitchen, he will give you a tour of the kitchen. And I'm sure this doesn't break any standards for health department or anything like that. Everything's just totally fine because the owner has said it. Do you want to meet the owner? Do you want to come back house? I can do that. I can help you meet the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. As this owner, we walked us around the kitchen, and he told us all these grand stories, most of them probably true, and he provides the personal catering for Paul Allen when he's in his suite at the Seahawks games, and he does all the catering for that. And they ship his food all over the world on planes and all this kind of stuff because he's the guy that makes the food there. And if you tell him I sent you, you can get a tip. No, I don't know. Great stuff. But that access and that total ease with which he could walk through his own kitchen and show us what a tandoori oven was like, and here's all the bread waiting to go, and here's all the fresh produce, and here's all that kind of stuff, just reminded me of how we can enter the very throne room of grace by right as children of God to pray in those places and to bring people before the throne room of God. We can go to the back of the house and with all authority knowing, hey, you can come because I know the owner. I know the King of Kings. Come with me. I think that we've given up that identity, that we have access to the throne room of God, and that we're children of God, and that we are who he says we are. And we sometimes just kind of get through life and try to squeeze by and try to do what everybody else is doing, and we haven't engaged his kingdom and spent every day, really every moment, and this is as much talking to myself as to you, engaging every moment saying, okay, your kingdom come. Your will be done. I want things to operate like they should operate, where when you say something, when you declare something to be, that then I live that out. That's who I am. If that's who you say I am, then this is how I will live. Your kingdom come. I don't want to seek the things of this world and serve and plan my schedule and my policy and my life around the gods of this world. Money, sex, power, fame, all these different things that we run after, and tell me who I am, tell me who I am. I want to seek first the kingdom of God and then watch his provision flood in. I think we can position ourselves, not to force God's hand, but position ourselves to be obedient and observe all that he's commanded, and to walk in the light, and to be who he says we are, and to walk in freedom and light. And it will bring us into conflict, but God is more powerful than that. We can bring his glory, his physical manifestation of God's significance. We can see his glory shine in all these different places because of walking in the light in his kingdom. We've been talking about how we're becoming people who make apprentices of Jesus in the everyday stuff of life. Which is, for me, is one of my steps is just stop doing ministry alone. Hand it off to somebody. Make an apprentice. Hey, there's an opportunity to go visit someone to go serve or to go do this thing. Okay, well then don't do it alone. Bring somebody along. And I've been trying to prioritize that as a leader. Okay, how do I make sure that I'm not just doing these one-off experiences of, with my friends, non-Christian friends, or in any ministry context, how do I make sure I'm bringing people along with me? So if you get a text or a call, or you want to talk to me and say, I don't know how to do that kind of stuff, take me with you sometime. Okay, let's go. Let's lean into that and see what God has to do. Because we're bringing apprenticeship or discipleship is bringing everybody closer and closer and closer to who God is and how he wants to reveal himself in you, submitting all of life, the empowering presence and lordship of Jesus. So that's where we've been. That's what we've been talking about, and that's where we need to begin to add that, I believe, to what we think we're up to here in Issaquah. We've got to keep moving forward. We've identified that being together, visible and vulnerable with each other in a community context on mission in the presence of God is going to lead us into seeing his glory throughout the earth. And building people into their new identity. And this is where we have to just believe it or not, because of who God is, Father, Son, and Spirit, and what he has done, that determines who we are. And we don't have a huge choice in that. I know that we could fill 100 things about what the Father has done. But we know that he declares us to be his loved family of God most often, and so we stick with that, the family aspect. We know that the Son has done all sorts of things. He also healed the sick, and he also did that. But he left us this example. See, I've served you so that you will serve others. So we're highlighting this aspect of what he's done and his identity and his activity that tells us our identity, that we are servants of the King. And it's clear as anything that the Holy Spirit is the sender. We will be his witnesses. We will be sent out to proclaim Jesus, to help people encounter and witness the King of who he is. And so we desire to see formed a missional community in all sorts of neighborhoods around here. Now, we can call it whatever we want, but just this dials it in pretty tight. To a missional community is a local group whose goal is to live out these identities of family and servants and missionaries and making disciples who make disciples. And we're trying to do all sorts of things, like that family concept. What does it mean to be a family? Well, we're going to try to do a family meal here soon. So after church on Sunday the 9th, we're going to engage that idea of family. But a missional community would also do that in a sense of like, okay, what would it look like in a local context to live like family together? And there's all sorts of resources and tools to dial that in, but it's a great mental exercise. Okay, what would it look like for us to be more like family and servants and missionaries? As a group, we're going to serve this Saturday. I need a few more RSVPs so I know who to communicate with, but at Maywood Middle School, we're just going to practice serving. And at Pacific Cascade Middle School, we're going to practice serving. We're just going to work those muscles out a bit. And on mission, well, that's a constant thing, but what we're hoping that each group identifies a people that they're going to serve and they're going to love and they're going to speak the words of Jesus to. And we can dial that in further and further and further, but I just want to encourage you to be opening yourself to what God may have you do in the midst of that. So missional community is not primarily a small group, though it may be small. But the goal is not just to huddle up, it's to break the huddle and go out. And so the objection usually is, well, then how would we get to know each other? Where's the stuff where we know each other? But I've been talking about this idea of a DNA group, right? Where there's 3 of you that are studying the scripture together, pouring into each other, rehearsing the gospel, and helping each other put that into action. And ideally that would be a subset of a missional community. And it's not primarily a Bible study, although you will study the Bible, but the goal is to act it out, right? The goal is to keep moving forward. It's not primarily a lot of things, not just social activism, although you will find chaos and you will bring the Spirit of God into that. It's not just, oh, we like each other or we like certain things, but you probably will start out as focusing on a certain mission and saying, yeah, I want to be a part of that. Let's go. And it's not just a weekly meeting, although you probably will meet weekly. The goal is to live your lives in such a way that you can infuse it with God's mission and heart for you and to the world around you, so that God could express his glory and his love to the people around us. So little by little, we're going to try to infuse little elements of this into the groups that we have. So let's say your group meets in Issaquah, and you're enjoying each other, and you love each other, and you're caring for each other. This is an awesome treasure that we have. How can we leverage that and move that into the world? How can we offer hope and light to other people as well? So just a movement outward. If your group is awesome at the family stuff, then maybe add another aspect. Okay, so how can we take this family to serve? If your group's more about service, how can we add family element and make sure we're proclaiming Jesus in everything that we do? To be part of a church, and then there's all sorts of churches, and there's all sorts of ways to be a part of a church, but to be part of a church means to be engaged in the work of God together. I remember my doctor, Jane, who said, I'm not really part of a church anymore. Like, oh, that's sad. What do? I just show up. Like, oh, that's no good. That's no good. We want more for you. And we believe the Spirit of God has so much more for you as you step out little by little. I actually don't know if God's going to do it little by little. That's not a promise. But I think sometimes it's little by little. And one hint is, don't tell him what you're scared of. That helps if you want to go little by little. Because like with the disciples, if he had asked them, what are you scared of? We're scared of big storms on the sea. We're scared of demons. And we're scared of pigs. And he's like, I've got an adventure for you. Let's get in the boat and go to the other side. And some of you know that story where the big storm and we're going to die. And what's wrong with Jesus? And then they come over to the Gentile area where we're not even supposed to be over here, it seems. And then there's a demon-possessed person. So this is not a guarantee that he's going to take you little by little. But he knows what you need. And he knows that to be fully submitted to God in every aspect, to really see the character of Jesus come out in all these ways, means that we've got growth to do. We've got some movement to do. Some of your groups are really good about giving and loving and caring, and those are definitely parts of who Jesus is. Huge aspects of the shepherding and care and comfort, all those things. But there's also, he risks a lot. And he says yes to Jesus, yes to God in these ways that are sometimes kind of scary for the people around him, right? So if we want to follow Jesus and we want to experience Jesus and we want to see his glory, then we need to step into the areas where he is. And I will be the first one to admit that we don't necessarily know what it looks like to spread the news widely in the east side here. We're not experts at this. To really know, what's broken in the heart of the person in Issaquah or on the east side or Maple Valley, what's really broken? How do we speak to that? How do we speak their language? We don't really know that. But we've got about 150 people here today that have the Spirit of God living in them. And they have a group of people around them and could begin to go, I wonder if this is it. Yeah, I wonder too. Let's go see if this is what God's calling us to do in that specific area, in that specific region. We're talking, many of you are involved in really good things. And some of you feel kind of alone in those good things. Yeah, it's kind of my thing I do. Well, that's awesome. What if we could bring other people around you? Well, that would be amazing. But every time I've asked, they've said, no, that's not my thing. Okay. So what if we could get a group that could form around a mission so we could all connect with and participate with and help you out? You might serve a population that could use some wraparound services. And we've been talking about foster care, and we have people connected with Special Olympics and homeless work, and all sorts of different things that have come up in these different neighborhoods. Well, let's figure out what it would look like to come around you as family and support you. So let's not do this alone. Okay. There's a lot of us here, and Lone Rangers is just not the way Jesus did it. He always did it with other people to hand off that ministry. And so if this has sparked some ideas for you, well, maybe we could be involved in that. I'm not just going to say, sounds like something you should do. Although you might be a point person to lead that. But what is God saying? What does it look like? What does brokenness look like in your area? Where's the chaos in your area? Where are the people that need Jesus? So, okay, what would it look like to lean into that? And let's be strong and very courageous. And if we have to say that 10 times, we're in good company. That was what God told Joshua many, many, many times. Be strong and very courageous. The Lord will go ahead of you. I will be with you. But let's turn a corner and not just do these isolated ministry things on our own. Let's do this together as family. And my email inbox is wide open. I'd even give you my cell phone number. I mean, let's talk about what you see God doing and how can we connect in and make these things happen, because we want to see God's glory reign throughout this earth. We want to see this whole area have Jesus be the talk of the town. We want to hear stories of it. Man, did you hear about those Jesus people again? Did you see what they are so weird. And yet they've got an amazing message. And look at the way they treat people. And that's amazing. I still don't believe Jesus, they might say, but I can't get over the way they're living. That's strange enough to take notice. And for too long, we've been weird in the wrong ways, so let's be weird in the right ways, right? Let's be weird by our love. Why do they keep loving? Well, that's who Jesus is, apparently. Why do they keep leaning into chaos? Well, why do they keep escaping their comfort? Well, Jesus. I guess that's what he does. Well, don't they worship the gods of this world and money and sex and power and all that? No, it sounds like they've given up on that. Crucified with Christ and have a new identity, and they apparently don't need all that, and they just lean into who Jesus says they are. I don't know about that. Yeah. But at least they'll be talking about the glory of God. Right now, it's a pretty silent topic on the east side anyway. Doesn't come up much. Jesus doesn't come up much. So what we need to change in our existing group, maybe it's your family, maybe it's your peers. You get together and you do this thing, you make the lunches and you go downtown and you do this. What we need to change to focus on, to live into the identity of family, or maybe it's servant, or maybe it's missionary. What we need to change about my schedule to engage in everyday mission mindset. I know for me, that would be praying that Lord's Prayer just daily, constantly. Okay, God, your name needs to be more honored in my life today. Elevated in my thoughts, elevated in my speech. And your kingdom, may your kingdom come and your will be done. And now help me keep an eye out for it as I go through this everyday stuff. And then, questions to ponder. What do you think keeps us from doing that? When Jesus gave up his life and willingly went to the cross, he showed the world, and it says even that he showed the principalities and powers. He put them to open shame, saying, this is the way you lead, by serving, by giving yourself. And when we worship Jesus, and here in a moment we're gonna take communion, which is the body and the blood. We have a little cracker, a little wafer, and the cup, which symbolize his body and his blood, the new covenant he makes with us. When we celebrate him, you realize what we're celebrating, right? The King who did not come to be served, but to serve. We're celebrating someone who, instead of cursing his enemies, blessed them, even at the point of his death. Forgive them, Father. They don't know what they're doing. Christians could make quite a wave in society if they followed that example, wouldn't they? Not my interests, but his alone. Not my kingdom, but his alone. And we are becoming that church to make waves in all these different places where we live, work, learn, or play. As the service come forward, let's just pray. Jesus, we celebrate you, and we commemorate your death, and we glory in your resurrection, and we're asking that you would move us. And ultimately, that's the only thing that's going to make a difference, that you move us. And so we offer ourselves to you, and we commemorate your death and your triumph over sin, and ask that you would do that work in us as well, that you would move us. God, it's only by your power that we become a revived people. And so we open ourselves to you. In Jesus' name, amen.